joint meetings, that they go to Camp David together, that they have something like they had at Blair House toward the tail end of the health care debate. That was a wonderful set of hours at the Blair House. I think the more you institutionalize these things, the more you go beyond rhetoric to actually the way you act, the more likely we are to be successful.
Interesting discussion, because often we save those things for either crises, things that are impassable, or foreign dignitaries with whom we're having difficult relations. Why not do it between Congress and the White House and the different parties? Very interesting take on that, David. Arianna Huffington is the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. Arianna, good to see you. The economy, boy, it's been the top issue for voters coming on 3 years now. Millions of people out of work, looking for jobs, home values have collapsed. What role does that play in the pitch that our political tone has taken?
Well, it does play a huge role. You know, historically, we've seen that in times of economic crisis and deep economic anxiety, we now have 27 million people either unemployed or underemployed. And there is the sense generally in the country that there may be another shoe to drop. When that happens, when over 2 million families have lost their homes in foreclosure in the last 2 years, and there is many, many more to come, there is that growing sense that people are not safe. There is that fear that comes. And when people operate from fear, unfortunately, they operate not from the better angels of our nature, but from our darker instincts.
And that's exactly what we've seen much of. Mark Skoda joins me now. He's the founder and chairman of the Memphis Tea Party. Mark, shortly after the shooting in Tucson, Arizona, prize-winning economist Paul Krugman wrote this in the New York Times. Let me read it to you. Citizens of other democracies may marvel at the American psyche, at the way efforts by mildly liberal presidents to expand health coverage are met with cries of tyranny and talk of armed resistance. Still, that's what happens when a Democrat occupies the White House, and there's a market for anyone willing to stoke that anger. That is a commentary that has come under some criticism. It may have started the ball rolling, the ball that Sarah Palin ended up commenting on a few days ago. Is Paul Krugman's characterization of the current political climate fair, in your opinion?
No, absolutely not. Look, a couple of things. First of all, Krugman, I think, was inflammatory. And frankly, if you look at the media narrative today, much of this is a backward look towards the healthcare debates of the town halls and, of course, Washington last year. Today, what you're seeing in the Tea Party movement in particular is states organizing. It's Montana, Texas, Missouri, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, New Jersey, New York, where we're finding that this whole effort, which was initially visceral, and I've said this before, there was a visceral anger, unquestionably, but it was turned into positive action. So we saw this tsunami in November of Republicans being elected, both at the state and national level. And I think today we see people like Jamie Radke, a leader in Virginia who's running for U.S. Senator, and she'll be running, obviously, against Webb. We've seen a number of people who are taking leadership roles. And I think unfortunately, this view that we have today is sort of backward-looking, not forward-looking. And let's also point out to Mr. Krugman that during the Fairness Doctrine, which is now being called for yet again by Representative Clyburn, we had the murder and assassination of President Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. We had Martin Luther King. We had, of course, twice Gerald Ford was shot at. We had numerous events during quote-unquote political civility where, regrettably, enormous tragedies occurred. So I think his connection between what took place in Tucson and the Tea Party movement was, in my view, reprehensible.
Right, and I think the president, in his speech, made some efforts to try and disassociate those two things, to sort of say, let's not talk about that lack of civility causing the shooting, but let's take this opportunity, David, to focus on civility in politics. The president picked that up. Let's just listen to what he had to say specifically about civility.
And if, as has been discussed in recent days, their death helps usher in more civility in our public discourse, let us remember it is not because a simple lack of civility caused this tragedy. It did not. But rather because only a more civil and honest public discourse can help us face up to the challenges of our nation in a way that would make them proud.
All right. Very few people, David, very few people in this country, even people who are who make a habit out of criticizing the president, did not agree with those words. Bottom line, though, next week, the House Republicans go back to renew their push to repeal health care reform. This was one of the most divisive issues this country has seen in decades. Is this debate going to look